Me, it was a deer. I thought, man, there's my deer of a lifetime. I really did. I mean, in my mind, I was like, that's it. That's my deer of a lifetime. That's the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life.
They say hunting and fishing can be dated back more than 2 million years. Throughout the years, the historic angler and hunter has steadily evolved into the avid hunter and angler that we know and love today. Welcome to the Outdoor Defiance podcast. As you listen, you will hear comical stories, companies talking about their products, researchers talking about their research, and overall ways to help you become a better outdoorsman. Welcome to today's episode.
What up, everyone? Welcome back. This will be episode 27. This week we have a special guest from Oklahoma, from here in our home state, and his name is Jeff Booth. If you guys are from Oklahoma and are familiar with social media, you guys might catch this guy. The dude has bow hunted for the last 25 years and here in Oklahoma and absolutely killed some hammers. I've followed this guy for, 5-10 years on social media, and I knew him from that. And I finally got the chance to catch up with him in person and meet him, and I'll say it's a great conversation. If you're watching on YouTube, wait till the end. You get to see his wall of fame and kind of go through some of his favorite deer stories. So if you're listening on Spotify, you might want to switch over to catch that. You will be able to hear the stories on Spotify and whatever other platform I guess you're listening to. But definitely you want to see those in person or see those in video. That was really cool. But funny stories, we get there. We sit down and talk for 3 hours without even having the podcast equipment set up. I finally go get the equipment, set it up, and we're just introducing ourselves, kind of getting to know each other and talking, and we're just talking about some stuff that we really don't want people to hear about, locations and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden I get everything set up, push play, and we just roll into it. No intro, nothing. And one thing led to another, and about 2 hours later we decided we probably better stop and let everyone go home and go to bed for the night so they can go to work the next day. But it was a fun time. And but I won't keep you guys much longer. Here it is.
There's certain deer in your life a lot of deer, and a majority of the deer you don't ever shoot, a lot of them shrink. A lot of them. There's them certain few that you get to shoot, and they actually grow. And those are the ones that are just like, man, this 100%. This is crazy.
That non-typical.
Oh yeah, I mean, the first one, I literally, in all honesty, I had no idea what he was when I shot him. It all happened the way it happened, and the way it all went down. I would have never, if I'd have missed him or not got him or he'd have walked off, all I'd have been able to tell my buddies, it's the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. I wouldn't have been able to say, man, he was this big, gnarly, non-typical. I just, and that's the side I saw first. He's facing the way where I see all that's. I just remember seeing a big old tall just stuff. And there's certain deer that, man, when you put your eyes on them, there ain't no guessing. Yeah. Is this a shooter? I like when you see them deer every once in a while that there's no questioning. You're just like,
you're grabbing your
bow and kill this deer, man. That's the deer that are the really special ones. You get a lot of deer that you get a little more time with. You get to watch them a minute, and you kind of like, man, it's a nice buck. I'm gonna send the arrow his way. And then there's certain ones where it happens fast. And my whole bow hunting life, I've always been really good at holding my emotions until after.
That's me.
I'm real good. I'm real good with everything. I'm kind of robotic to the point, but once that arrow leaves my bow, I'm a train wreck, man. I'm an absolute train wreck. I can probably call my buddies and sound like a 12-year-old schoolgirl, on the phone. It's just, but I've always had the composure until that arrow leaves my bow, and once that arrow leaves my bow, that's when I lose my emotions. And man, I hope I never lose that feeling. Honestly, and I haven't yet. Like I was telling y'all earlier, I hunt just as much and as hard now as I ever have. I'm fortunate enough where I got a few. Now, I don't have big properties, but I got several different in whole areas of the state. In central part of the state, and here at my home place in northeastern Oklahoma, and then at the families, and out between Fort Gibson and Tahlequah. It's just, I got all these different areas to hunt that I can hunt every day. Here, y'all see my place here. I I can be off work and in a tree stand in 5 minutes, you know, on foot if I want to. And I this home place, there's very rarely a deer that I'd ever really get excited about, but I still hunt every day.
Yeah.
Because I just like sitting in the woods. You know, I like being out there. I'm that optimist person. I'm optimistic. I'm always like, you just never know.
Yeah, 100%.
Even here, man, you're like, you never know. You never know what's gonna come through a neighborhood, cross the road, and jump the fence, and be on this 75 acres. You know, and same like going to Fort Gibson, like I was telling you about the family farm down there. I've kept it old school. There's not one camera. There's not one feeder. You go deer hunting, man, and it reminds me of my youth. Is what it does. Reminds me when I was a young man, where you know you have no idea what's going on. You feel like you've put your stands in the best spot, but you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't know. And you know the thing about Fort Gibson, it's kind of, I call it, you know, the Cherokee County hill bucks. It's a lot of just scrub bucks, and they're not real big, but there are some good ones. But I have just as much fun hunting there as I do where I go to a farm where, you know, a 200 incher could walk across, you know, at any point in time. Doesn't happen often, you know, but the possibility is there. But all the places, it's kind of the deal, and that's kind of where I try to be honest with people in my deal is, man, I don't try to facilitate into the norm of everybody talking about, well, this buck scores this and this buck scores this. Man, I don't know. You know, I hunt, and what I try to do is, and it's all changed, man. We've all grown through our periods of our hunting careers, but where I'm at right now is I try to hunt age, you know, and we kind of talked about a little bit earlier is basically deer like humans, man. We can't all be, you know, major league NFL athletes. You know, we're given what we're given, and we have to make it work. You know, and I think deer are the same way. Even if they get to that full, what I feel maturity of a deer does best is in that, you know, 5-6 year old range that they may not ever make, even pupping young. Who knows? But you can almost tell the more time you spend in the woods when a deer is a mature buck. I mean, there's always these telltale signs you can look at, but basically it's just their body.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the way they carry themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and the more time you spend in the woods, and you can watch, you know, if you're ever fortunate enough to be sitting in the woods and you've got a group of deer in there, and you know, maybe some 3-year-old bucks or something like that, or that are nice deer, and a mature buck walk in, you'll know who the mature buck is. There doesn't have to be a horn hit, but when he walks in and there's other deer around and he is the mature deer on the property, you're going to know it.
100%.
You know, I mean, it's just the way they carry themselves. A big deer, but you know, it's kind of, we talk about, and I talk about, I'm also still a killer, man. I mean, I like to shoot deer, and I mean, we eat a lot of deer at this house. We don't just, it's not just horn hunting for me. You know, that's the cream of that's just the icing on the cake, really.
Yeah.
But man, I just love hunting deer. I love doing it with a bow. You know, it's something, I think I've basically only had a bow in my hand now for better part of 20 years, man, that I can think of, you know, and it's just something I like. I don't care what anybody else uses.
Right.
I don't have a problem with someone gun hunting. I don't have a problem with someone, you know, crossbow hunting. I mean, if it makes you happy and you're excited and you're out there in the woods and doing what you want to do, then that's really what it boils down to.
That's what I say a lot is, who am I to judge?
We're not.
Who am I to judge what someone else's happiness is? And that's not, if they're out hunting, that's what all in all we should want someone to do.
Well,
you know, and then going back on your whole, I want to go back real quick and take it on this. You were like, you know, you hunt here at your home place, even if you don't have a big buck, you know, and my mindset on that year round is it takes one deer.
That's it. Yep.
It takes one deer.
Yep.
You know, and all these people, I didn't have a good hunt. I only saw 3 deer. But I promise you, there's someone else out there that didn't see any deer that are still excited to go out.
Yep.
But there's also been hunts that I've been on, and the one deer I saw was the one I shot.
Yeah. And
you know,
I tell people this all the time. If you're not a bow hunter, man, you're not learning as much as you can in the deer woods. You know, I think the old saying, you heard the Fred Bear deal talk about, a bow hunter can learn more in whatever the amount of time is versus all this amount of time of a gun hunter. And it's not just that, but what I say about, if you're not a bow hunter and into archery of some sort or any form of archery, you're missing out on some of the best time to be in the woods, period. Because in Oklahoma, for me, in my experience, black powder is a hair early for some stuff. Gun is just a hair late. But what I've noticed in my years, because I've done it for a long time now, where when November hits, it's either that first week or that second week or sometime there in November, I go to the woods and I stay for days on end, you know, and some of those days are slow. Like it's horrible. I mean, like, what is going on? Like, are we still in the October lull? I don't understand. It's November, but I've seen it so many times. I've been at deer camp and in the rut in November in that time period, and I have literally at a farm where I've killed these big bucks, have set for 6 and 7 days and not laid my eyes on a buck. And then on the 8th day, man, I don't know. It's like a light switch comes on, and all of a sudden you've got buck after buck after buck on their feet, running around you, either looking, you know, tending, chasing, or something, and you saw none of that up in the, and it's just that day.
Yep.
It's not the next day after that. It's so weird, and I tell people all the time, there's a 2 or 3 day window to be in the woods in November at some point, and I can't pin it down for you. I mean, I'd love to. Yeah. I can't pin it, but all I know is come November 1st, a guy really should spend what time he can in the woods before gun, because you're going to probably at some point in that time frame see some of the most crazy, awesome stuff you can ever witness, man, that you don't ever see any other time in the woods. And that's kind of what I've learned. And there's parameters that go outside that, you know, like one of my big deer, it's an October 2nd deer, 95 degrees outside. You know, that's an exception to the norm for me. I don't, that's the only big deer I've ever shot early. The rest of them have all been in that November time frame for me. But that deer, shooting that deer, October the 2nd and 95 degrees, also taught an old dog new tricks that, man, if you do have deer on a summer pattern and it stays a summer pattern up to opening the bow season, man, you can maybe kill that deer. You have a really good chance of killing that deer.
Last year I shot a real old 8, and actually I was kind of upset. I was kind of hunting some public land because I don't have anything. My deal is I will go hunt public until I have something, I see something, or it starts getting cooler. But so I was at one of my particular places, and I didn't have anything out there, right? And the night before, I get this picture of this old 8 coming in, big shoulder, just sitting there eating. And I'm like, okay. Next day, I go out, work all day on the tractor out there. I'm like, I'm going to get off a little early just in case, I decide to hunt. Pull off that field, and I tell my dad, nah, I'm not going to hunt tonight. I call my girlfriend, and she's like, why? You're there, You're an hour from home. Why? You're wasting your time when you get to hunt. And, and I was like, that's true. I was like, that buck literally decided to come in last night. He might start a schedule. Lo and behold, I shoot him 20 minutes in daylight. Here he came, same place he came out of the day before, just came walking out like he's been there 100 times. Yep. And I shot him. That's the earliest I've ever shot a buck.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the same deal on one of these big non-typicals that I killed, it was the same type of thing. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I accidentally left a camera out, and he was on it all summer on film, and I knew where he was kind of going if he was on that trail, but I didn't have a camera at that spot. And it's corn feeder. It was a feeder, but I had no camera there. And I had decided that day that I kept forgetting to bring a camera every time I went to the farm. Well, I was like, I'm going to go and put a camera on that feeder to see if he's coming there. I know he is, but I need reassurance, y'all. I want to see him there. And I was talking to a couple friends, and one of them in particular was a neighbor of mine at the time that we got to be buddies, and he was a deer hunter. His name's Mike, and Mike was like, well, and even my wife was like, well, if you're going to Chandler to put a camera up, why not take your bow and hunt? It's an hour and 15 minutes from the house to get to that farm. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. And it's a south wind, so this place is absolutely bulletproof with the south. I mean, you can throw a party and not get busted at this spot with the south wind. It's like, well, I can't hurt anything. So I did that. I literally hung that camera on the tree and got up in my stand, and I mean, things just line out sometimes. It's just meant to be, because I was always that guy too that, man, if you're hunting, if you're getting on your farms and hunting before November, all you're doing is educating your deer. You have to relearn things, and you have to, now granted, I'm still hunting because I love to hunt, but that was my theory. I was always like, man, all these better bucks that I killed, what I say mature deer, are November deer. Why am I hunting outside of November? But in the same sense, I love to be in the woods. But that's where now, for me, I have these choices. I don't have to go to if I don't have a deer to hunt, I don't have to go to that farm and hunt. I can hunt here at home. I can hunt at the family land, in Fort Gibson. And so that's what makes it really nice now. And man, and like I said, if it was a guy and you only had one farm to hunt, you're not going to hear me tell you you're hunting it too much.
Yeah.
Who am I? I mean, do what you want,
yeah,
man.
go back on the crossbow thing.
It's kind of one of those things like, man, and here's the other deal. Like I said, you can hunt all you want early sometimes because there's not even a deer in the area. But when the rut kicks in, everything changes.
Yep.
Everything. I mean, you're going to lose deer that you've got, that you're hunting, you're going to lose those deer. Then you're also going to hopefully gain some deer that you have no idea about. Even with all our technology nowadays, with all the cameras and all these things, there's going to be deer on you that you have no idea.
100%.
You've never seen them.
I think one thing I've noticed, what makes November so special, it's like you said, you don't know what the heck's gonna happen. And those big bucks know, like, they're not gonna mess up a whole lot all the time, but when that first doe comes in heat, they know. And it's on. Like, you'll get those younger and stuff kind of going, trying to get things going, but those older bucks won't necessarily, they'll be doing things, but when that first doe comes into heat, all bets are off. You could see a deer one time your entire life, and he could be the November 5th, and he could come through your place and you could kill him, but that could be the only day he runs through there, and that's what's so special about November.
And you're dead on, man. I mean, it's kind of like even with cameras, man, you can't hunt your cameras.
Yeah.
I've learned that too in the past. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have been setting at that spot and a deer walk in front of that camera and not one picture of that deer. And I used to, you used to get depressed, or back when cameras started rolling around, I was like, well, I'm not getting any pictures over here. I'm not going to go hunt that spot. Man, don't do that. Don't get caught in that trap, because we all have.
100%.
But there's so much that goes on that camera flat out isn't always going to get. I don't care what brand it is or any of these things. I mean, it's going to miss.
Yep.
Because I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes, where you're like excited, like, man, I didn't get that deer shot, but I'm going to have a picture of him. Then you get your card. I'm old school, man. Mine are all still card cameras, and you pull your card, you come home and check, and there's no picture.
Yeah.
I don't have a picture of that deer. Then I got some really cool photos. I mean, one of that 8-point there on the lower left, the wall right there, I've had my camera was set up, and I didn't even know it, but you got that deer in the frame of the camera and me in the stand.
Oh wow!
Seconds before I put an arrow in that deer.
That's
cool. So it's a really cool picture. But it's just one of those things that, man, there's a lot of technologies I think that have helped deer hunting naturally, just like everything else. But you can't just count on it.
No, that's like you said, there's times you see deer in the front of it. I've done that too, even with my reveals. My Tacticams. Everyone's high on them, and I still love my Tacticams.
Yeah.
Especially for the farms that I can't be around like I used to. Because I used to, they used to be out my back door, 10 minutes I was in the tree. And I've sat there and been telling Gunner, I don't know what deer this is. One more year, absolute stud. I'll send you a picture when it sends to me. And I'm just sitting there in the stand waiting for my phone to just buzz. And I'm staring at him. Never buzzes.
Yeah. Yeah,
but thankfully I have that camera right there so people don't think I'm just talking, hot air. But there's multiple times. And then, there's 2 bucks that me and him using some of our footage, like reels and all that you guys will see. We never had camera pictures of them. We saw them for weeks before we even got one picture. Gunner doesn't have one picture of one of the biggest 8 points I've ever seen, but we have video of it.
Yep.
And if he wasn't there, he would have never seen that deer that one day.
I'll tell you right now, there's 2 deer that I have killed that I have pictures of that I knew were there. That's it.
Yeah.
And one was the 170 that from this year. I mean, I had history with that deer. I knew he was around. I had tons of photos of him. The other is the Nontypical in 2019. I had, had pictures of him. The rest of the bucks I've killed, even the first Nontypical, what was really cool about that is with Facebook and all these things, when I shot that deer, Of course, I put it on my Facebook. Everybody, you got to do that.
Yeah,
man. You want to show everybody and show your deer off and all this stuff. And to me, it was a deer. I thought, man, there's my deer of a lifetime. I really did. I mean, in my mind, I was like, that's it. That's my deer of a lifetime. That's that's the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life. That's probably going to be the biggest one I ever kill, and I'm fine with it. I'm still going to hunt like crazy, but that in my mind, that was it. Well, I get a Facebook request from some guy that I don't know, and if we don't have mutuals and I don't know you, or there's not, I just don't accept. It's just the way I am. Well, I didn't accept it, and about the minute that I didn't accept it, he sent me a private messenger photo of that buck, and now I'm like, man, where are you? I sent him a message like, hey bud, sorry about, send me another one. We'll set it up. And we got to talking, and I'm trying to figure out, man, I have no history of this deer. Didn't never know. This buck was living on their lease, and it was as the crow flies, man. I think it was 6 to 8 miles away.
Wow.
And this is central Oklahoma, not big country. Not like out west where you got open fields, and this is chopped up, country. And I'm like, man, this can't be right. I'm like, drop me a pin of where, to make sure that we can, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, this buck was living on them. They had zero ever daylight photos. Nocturnal is all get out. Never, not one daylight photo of several years of photos. No daylights. The last picture they had of him was November 3rd. I killed him November 6th.
Wow. So
that far away. Breeding a doe, basically. Not chasing a doe. I mean, this deer was tending this doe. They were on me in the dark. All this other stuff. That's what. And right at he was in there grunting her and tending her in the dark. And that doe is what was his demise, because and we're talking. It's so crazy to me. So back on the cameras, you never know. I mean, when I'm looking, I would have sworn, like, dude, ain't no way this buck traveled that distance in this country. No way. But for whatever reason, that's what he did.
So that non-typical I told you about, we didn't have any history. So I take this back. I had him up until he was 6.5. Okay, just a real pretty tall 10 point, and 7.5 gone. So I was like, oh, someone got him around here, and I didn't get a picture of him. Huge body. 8.5 shows back up. But that was muzzleloader opener. I crawled down on the stand. It was a year like we're like, oh, we don't have anything, but I'm still gonna hunt. I go pull the card. All right, we take it back down. Me and my dad are going through it, and he's going through an iPad. I mean, just flying through these pictures. Like, we don't have anything, and I'm like, Dad, go back. Like, I saw something. He's like, is this grass? And I was like, no, Dad, that's not grass. The bottom right corner, just tines. I mean, just tall tines. That's all he saw. That was the night before, so this was the morning. That morning, while I was hunting, he was 2 miles up the road at my cousin's. I shot him that evening. So for some reason, he was like, I better go back there. So that's what's crazy. We lost him for a year. We've had him all sorts of pictures of and he was 10 point that comes back an absolute freak. So yeah, it's crazy. It's just, that's why I get, everyone's like, no, I don't have anything on camera. And I do that. I'll say that.
We've all done it.
I go hunt public still, but November's getting here. I'm not on the public.
Once November lands, all bets are off. And I tell people all the time, I try to be the most careful hunter you can be, because I have learned. I mean, man, in all actuality, people might get mad at me for saying this, but a deer's a glorified goat. I mean, it is. If we're going to sit here and call a spade, a deer's a glorified goat. But in the same sense of that, man, there's deer you just can't get killed. No matter what. I mean, there's just something about some of these bucks that are just, to me, unkillable. I mean, it's the craziest thing. And outside of that, but to me, a big mature buck that has been around areas that is hunted, and he's had pressure. He's a different animal. He's definitely extremely smart about the way he goes about his business. But in the same sense, man, you kind of just have to put yourself out there. And in the rut, it's time to take chances. Like I was telling y'all earlier how I kind of hunt my farms. I'm an edge hunter and all this stuff, and you could probably dive in there in the heart of some of this at different times of the year and get away with it. And if you were ever going to do that, it could be the rut. Because when they get on a doe, and it's a doe, and they know this, like you were talking about earlier, a good buck. You don't ever see a big mature deer chasing a doe that ain't ready.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's on that doe for a reason. He's not this 2-year-old or this year-old or 3-year-old or, you know, whatever. You know, you'll see that a lot. And you can always tell early. It's always in that 3rd week of October or somewhere in there. You'll start hearing grunting, and you'll see little bucks trying to harass does in food plots or whatever. But it's kind of, when you see a big mature deer on a doe, man, he's there for a reason.
Yeah.
And all of his guards are let down at that point. So he might run right into your wind, but he ain't got time to figure out that he just ran into your wind. So there's some times you can gamble, but I still try to do the careful route. You know, just for me, I'm an edge hunter, and man, I'll drop this guy's name, and he was killing big deer back in the day when big deer weren't as common as they are now.
Yeah.
We're talking early 90s, mid 90s. You know, it was a different world here. I mean, for everybody, we didn't have all this stuff, and you know, and he was killing big deer in Stratford, Oklahoma. Like back then, that wasn't known for big deer, but he was legitimately shooting Pope and Young class bucks, and consistently. But he told me way back, he kind of took me under his wing. He was like, man, I didn't have the time that he had. He owned his own business, you know, so he could hunt a lot if he wanted to. I didn't own my own. I was working, you know, for a heat and air supply house, and I was like, man, if you had 1 week to take off work and be in the woods, when would that week be? And he told me right off, he said sometime at the 1st of November. You know, that 1st or 2nd week in November, that's when I would take a week and be in the woods. And when he told me that back in the 90s, that's what I started doing. And man, then he was like, hunt edges. You know, you want to set up on edges, find some areas, and you know, hunt these edges where you can slip in and out of your stand without, you know, interfering too much with anything. And I started doing that, and man, lo and behold, I started seeing more deer. You know, it's just one of those things I've always done. And just like, you know, here at this 75 acres, once deer season gets here, nothing gets messed with in the heart of this. You know, my fences are cleared on both sides, and depending upon the wind, that's where you head to get to a stand, and you hop in and get in your stand. That's it. But there's other ways too.
Yeah.
I'm not arrogant enough, or like, well, you're doing it wrong because you're not doing it the way I do it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm all about, man, how'd you get that deer killed?
We checked that camera.
But we run out of battery already.
I have no idea. That one is being weird, so I didn't want to make sure.
But
that
yeah,
one.
it's just kind of one of those.
No, that one.
It's kind of one of those deals where I don't think there's any right or wrong ways. It's all about what a guy's goals are.
Well, that's like anything. You know, there's 1,000 ways to build this table right here.
Mm-hmm.
You have a way, I have a way, Gunner might have a way. Doesn't mean
Either
none of
one
us
are
are
wrong.
Yeah. You know, and that's, you know, we sit here and, like, for my age, I feel like I've harvested some really great deer, and for Gunner's age, he's harvested some great deer, and it's like, but we can sit here and talk to you about it, and it's not like you're like, well, I know it all.
No,
you know,
man.
and that's where
I've told myself this, and like I told you, I tournament bass fish too.
Yeah.
And the day that you, in anything in life, but the day that you think you know it all about everything, you better just quit everything.
Yeah.
Because you don't. I mean, you learn, like, some of the bass tournaments I fish, you draw co-anglers, and some of my buddies will gripe about it. Man, I'm drawing. You know, I don't like drawing a co-angler. I'm like, man, I've learned stuff from my co-anglers. You know, I mean, and we all have.
Yeah.
I've had my rear end kicked from the back of the boat by a co-angler before. You know, it's just like there's always something to learn, and that's, I think the people that succeed the most are the ones that continually will try to take all the information they can and figure out what works in their situation. Because my deer hunting farm could be totally different than yours.
Right.
You know, it hunts different, it sets up different, the deer are different, all these things. But, you know, if you can take all the, I mean, I'm all ears. Like, to this
100%.
day, I still don't know. I'm trying to get more into food plots and planning. I'm not a farmer, you know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I can take you right here, right outside this barn right now, where a buddy just dropped this 4-foot disc off for me because I want to start tearing up some ground. I told y'all about this place. I need food. I got the cover at the home place, but I don't have the food.
Right.
So I want to get more. You know, and what it's so fun when it's yours is it's fun to build the stands.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun to make the food plots. Like, man, my tractor, give me $15 a diesel and I'm good for the day. I mean, I can get on that tractor and just whatever, man. I mean, just go to cutting stuff down. I mean, I've I can't tell you how many times I broke my brush hog because I treat it like a bulldozer. You know, it's just one of those things where it's just fun to me. And then when it comes to fruition and you actually make it work, and everything comes together, and man, I built that ground blind that I nicknamed the Turd Shack because boys, let me tell you, my carpentry skills are horrible. You know, I've actually had I've had a few buddies come out here and hunt the home place that I know, and one of them literally put me in a group chat, didn't put me in it, but group chatted all his other buddies, taking snapshots of my handiwork, like what am I actually setting in, you know? And I'm like, did you kill a deer out of it?
Yeah.
Actually, he did. You know, I'm like, it works. I said, man, I built that thing with a hammer and nails and a chainsaw. No tape measures, no nothing. You know, just I'm gonna cut a board and nail it to that board, and you know, but it works because I got tired of doing the ground blinds that either tear up in storms or they don't last more than a year.
Yep.
And I had all this lumber. I'm like, I'm just gonna go. And man, if I showed you guys these things, you'd laugh, but their work. You know, we just built a new one the other day, and I mean, I went up and put a little paint on it today, and I painted buckhead on it. You know, I mean, it's golden, man, but it's just kind of funny.
Yeah,
it's doing the work. No, go ahead, man.
On that subject, building your own stuff, to keep my grandpa hunting the way he does, we've had to kind of evolve that. So we have, especially at our home place where I killed my big deer, we call that the farm. That's just what we call it.
Yeah.
We've got tower blinds there now that are like, I mean, they're put together. Like my grandpa and his buddy.
Yeah, they built it right.
Built it.
Yeah.
My dad and my grandpa built one. Like just, they're built good enough to where they'll last. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
And we've had to kind of evolve into making those. Used to, you know, when I was growing up, we'd have, you know, a couple ground blinds. We were hunting out of tree stands, all this other stuff. My grandpa got a little older. It's like, I can't stand the cold as much. So we're like, we want to keep you hunting. Yeah. So we started doing, just rigging up stuff like that to keep him hunting. Yeah. And he's got his blind. We call it, you know, G-Paw's blind. Yeah. And he's on the west side. That's his section.
His area. Yeah.
That's his area because he's got nice insulated blind. It's got a little pee tube in the corner. You can go pee without messing with the deer. Yeah. And it's got a little shelf right here. If he wants coffee in the morning or something, he can just stick it right there. Yep. So he can hunt. So no excuse now. Yeah. But it's funny how, you know, you get into this and you start evolving with like what you like to do, and you start like a place of your own. You just start doing things because you can make it what you want.
Yeah.
Well, going back on equipment, nothing will piss you off more when you walk in there to shoot a big deer and your blind's blown away.
Oh yeah.
You know, that will
trust me.
That will run your whole morning.
And I mean, I'm the world's worst of like not picking stuff up. Yeah. And I'm just gonna leave that blind. You know, and I've lost so many or had them tear up, and you know they're not cheap. And I got to think, I was like, man, why am I? But literally, and on this home place here, the timber's horrible. You know, I mean, I've only got a select few trees that could even take a ladder stand. Yeah. You know, they're just not that many. And the rest of it, you got to hunt on the ground. And I don't build tower blinds or nothing. I just build boxes basically. But man, I've got one up here, and it's the original turd shack. I mean, that's what we call it. It's like, where are you hunting the turd shack? I mean, it's just it's horrible. But man, it's a killing hut. You know? I mean, it's the deer. It's been there long enough now where it's money. You know, it's crazy, and it's fun to go hunt in inclement weather. Yeah. You know, with my daughter or whatever. I mean, if it's raining, all you got to do is make it there. You might get a little wet because something might leak through the roof, but you're covered. You know, for the most part. But it's a cool thing, and I just want to be in the woods, man. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole deal. Is I just want to be able to hunt. And I've been fortunate enough where I've been able to this whole time. You know, I mean, I'll be 52 in October, and I ain't slowing down. You know, I keep myself in shape. Yeah. And it's all down to the fishing and hunting. I mean, I don't want to be that. I know a lot of guys my age, man, they can't do anything. Yeah. And I'm like, you used to love to do this, or you love to do this, and man, you can't even walk around the block now, really, without struggling. You know, I'm like, man, we're only here once, and I'm not calling it quits. You know, I mean, my goal is I want to die in the woods or in that boat. Yeah. You know, if I don't feel sorry for me, family. You know, if old man Jeff passes away out in the woods and coyotes eat on him, man, I'm good. You know, I went out the way I wanted to, and I hope that's long down the road, you know, because I've had so many people, you know, family, friends with the hunting and the fishing are like, man, you'll lose it one day. You'll lose your want to. It's not happening, man.
Yeah,
it's just not. It's something I've done, and it's been in me since I was just a young boy. And I mean, I know one of the worst beatings I ever took from my dad was I snuck my shotgun out.
I have an exact story on this.
I mean, I couldn't have been 9 or 10, and it was a school day, a snow day at school. And I remember, man, I mean, I had a single shot, 20 gauge shotgun, and I used to go out with my pellet gun. I mean, we'd shoot rabbits with the pellet gun. You know, like you'd maybe get lucky and shoot a rabbit, maybe an occasional squirrel. Well, I had this wild idea that I'm going to sneak my shotgun out. You know, mom and dad are at work. I can sneak this shotgun out and go off in the woods, and it ain't far from here, man. It's when I grew up around here, and back then we had quail around here as well. My dad comes home from work, and I've got 5 quail, 2 rabbits, and a squirrel dead. And he knew right away. So not only did I do that, but I lied. He's like, what did you do? I was like, oh man, I took my pellet gun out. And he's like, so you're telling me you shot these quail and these rabbits and that squirrel with your pellet gun? Yeah, sure did. And man, I was on to him finally. I was young, but I realized I'm caught, man. And I owned up to it, and man, I took a butt whooping. I mean, an absolute butt whooping. And from that point forward, that gun was always taken apart, you know, when the parents weren't home. And, you know, so it took me until I was about, I don't, you know, it was a little bit different back then, but I want to say 13 or 14. I was at that point old enough where he felt like then I could take, man, we were always out. I mean, just chasing game, you know, whatever it was. You know, deer weren't a thing back then necessarily. There wasn't as many of them. Mm-hmm. You know, we've been through that before. I mean, I think I shot my first deer at 11 years old with that single shot H&R shotgun 20 gauge with a slug and a bead, you know, the bead on the end of the barrel. That's all it was. There was no sights on that gun. And I'll never forget, man, that's where it all got started. I will remember that until the day that I die. But I remember back then pushes were a big thing. Mm-hmm. You know, we did deer drives. That's just kind of how they moved deer around. And we were over here off the Grand River in Pryor Creek area, and we was going to do a push, and it was just me and my dad that day. And he's like, man, you go over here and set, go across this field, get in the woods and find you a place to set. I'm going to go up this ridge and work my way to you. You know, take me about 45 minutes to an hour probably to get it done. I was like, all right. I get all the way across that field, almost into the woods, and I look, and I guess as soon as my dad went in the woods over there, he jumped this group of deer. And there was like 8 does and 2 bucks, I'll never forget. And the 2 bucks were in the back, and they both looked identical. And at that point, man, all I seen was rack. They were, you know, they were both basket. I mean, this ended up being a basket rack 8, but it didn't matter. And they ran straight at me. And I'm standing at the field edge, and they see me finally, and they cut across away from me. And as they do, they're maybe 60, 70 yards at this point. And I just lay that shotgun down and shoot. And man, that buck just somersaults, falls down, gets up and runs all the way back across this field into the woods. And my dad, of course, hears me shooting. He walks over there, and I'm telling him what happened. He's like, okay, where's the deer? Well, we couldn't find any blood. And now he's like, you know, he's I don't know if he's not believing me. You know, he's not, you know, did you really shoot at a deer? What's going on here? Why is there no blood? You said you hit it. And I finally looked at him, and might have been crying, you know, as a young kid, but I was like, the deer physically fell down when I shot. Do deer trip? You know, is what I was at. I was like, the only way he fell down. So at that point, my dad was like, well, if the deer really fell, you hit him. So we go look, and all I remember is I watched where the deer ran in the woods and it's probably 200 yards across there. And we get over to that edge of the line, still no blood. Not one drop did we ever find. And I'll never forget, man, there was a lay down right there, and I'm basically sitting on that lay down because, man, I'm upset. My dad doesn't believe me, you know. I know that I watched the deer fall, what happened, and I look over, and that buck is laying at the end of that lay down that I'm sitting on, dead. And it was a basket rack 8 point at the time, but man, we're talking 19, what would that have been, 83 or 4, you know? Public land, you know, back then it was a public land hunt off the river over there, and That was my first deer. That was my first, and man, from that point forward, it's just all I've ever wanted to do.
Heck, I didn't even play sports in high school so I could hunt.
Yeah.
And that's not the only reason,
Right.
but that was one of the main reasons. I mean, I had to work and all that for my own vehicle, and so I was like, well, I could get off work and go hunt, or I could go have to practice sports after school and then go to work and not get to hunt.
Right.
I'm like, that's an easy
I'm
decision.
choosing hunting.
And there was a lot of things that went into that too, but we don't have to get into it. But it's like another thing that I think goes, like a lot of guys don't want to talk about it because we're supposed to be masculine and all that, but how much has hunting healed? Or, I mean? Like there's times that I've been lowest of low and I go get in a stand, I come back, I am mentally fine.
Man, I tell people all the time, I'm not, by any means, I didn't grow up in church. Religion was not something that was, I believe in God. I'm a religious person. I haven't been to church, much, but I tell people all the time, man, my church is in that tree.
Yep.
My church is out in that boat, out on that lake. I mean, I've been blessed with being an outdoorsman, the stuff we get to see that the average person never will see. I can't tell you how many sunrises I've seen running 70 miles an hour across the lake, with your buddy in a tournament. Me and him like little kids.
Yeah.
Not too many years ago, yelling that this is living. It's the same thing with being in a tree. Man, there's something mystical about walking in the woods, climbing into your tree, climbing into your blind, whatever that may be that you're hunting, and for the what if. There's no guarantees. There's no guarantee you're going to even see a deer. You don't know, you just don't know. You have no idea what you're going to see. And man, you may not see a deer that day, but the point of you being in that tree, people tell me I'm wired hot. I mean, I'm strung, I'm high strung. I want to be doing something all the time, but I physically can sit in a deer stand from dark to dark. And I've done it. And people are like, I don't know how you can even do that. I'm like, I don't either, but it's no problem, man. It is, especially the right time of year. I've done it, and I can't tell you how many of the good ones I've seen or taken at noon or 1.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a firm believer, and it's happened to me. I've told you all about a deer I was hunting here at this home place. I think deer start hunting us at times.
Yep.
I mean, I really do. They're like, they know when we're here. They know when we're in our tree stand. They just, some sixth sense or something has pegged them off, or they are bedded down somewhere where they watch your entry point and like they're hunting us. I mean, this 75 acres, I'll never forget the deer. One of the bucks I was trying to kill off the side, never did. Named him Curly. And man, I'd be up the hill, he'd be down the hill. I'd be down the hill, he'd be up the hill. Because I got cameras everywhere. Every location I've got on this, 75 acres, and I don't know if I got 20 cameras. I just got cameras everywhere. And I'm just like, what is going on here, man? I'm trying to do it right. I'm trying to be smart, but this deer, it knows every move I'm making, obviously. So he was just I was knowing them bucks. I was like, he's not killable, you know?
I've had an experience like that too. Like, I've talked about it multiple times. The conductor, like, he knew where I was every time.
Mm-hmm.
He would always, I set till 2:00 and left, and he was there at 2:30.
Wow.
I've not, he's been at this spot for a week, I go to that spot, he's at the other spot, and it's just like, I played cat and mouse all year, and then he disappears, and that was like 2016, 17, maybe even 18, somewhere in there, right? Mm-hmm. Disappears, never heard of him. They talk about seeing him, and I didn't even know Gunner until this point.
Right.
Like, I knew of him.
Right.
We were from different towns, and I moved to Morrison, and I knew of them because they're big hunters. If you live in the same town as a big hunter, you know.
Right.
And, and I talked to his dad about it, and we talked about it, and then and this has gone for years. Last year, I found out he was harvested that year.
Oh.
Because a guy commented on other friends and said, "Hey, that's a nice buck." And I saw the profile picture, and I was like, that guy's got a big buck. I'm gonna look at it. Lo and behold,
it was him.
There's a deer that I've been wondering for years.
Yeah,
what's happened.
Man, that's one of the bad things about technology is nothing will break a man's heart worse than your target buck popping up on someone's.
Yeah.
And it's happened to all of us in this day and time. And you're kind of like, man. Because a lot of times you have that inclination, like, yep, that deer just got killed. You know, on some of these smaller farms, and you hear gun season, you hear a shot, and you're like, that's probably him. Probably got him, and that has happened. But you see a picture of it, and you're just like, it sinks you. But what I will say, in my experience, as soon as you take a mature deer, especially off one of these small tracks, smaller tracks, it's no time and another one's there.
Or two.
Yeah, I mean, it's so crazy that and sometimes it's not even your highest scoring buck that is the the dominant deer of the area. A lot of times he's the dominant deer, but he's not necessarily the best antlered buck.
He's the meanest.
Yeah, man, he's just tough, and he's a bulldog. He runs them off, and man, you see does like that.
Yeah.
How many does have you guys seen when you're hunting? Like, and I'm a doe killer, man. I love to eat them. I love to eat deer. But what I've started doing is, man, I start shooting the mean nanny does.
Yep.
That's the ones I want to shoot. And you always got them ones. There was one right here at the house, and I don't care what I did or she did or what, but when I'm in that box blind, not a deer in the world has ever pegged me or ever gotten nervous but this one doe. And she will stare and stare and stare and stare if you're in there until something happens, and then just blow the whole field up. And I'm like, I'm going to kill her. When I get my first chance, that's the one I'm going to shoot. And man, that's like shooting a trophy buck to me.
Yeah.
Like getting rid of that. I mean, you get that. Some of them old does, they're just as smart as a big mature buck.
100%.
I mean, you got those old nanny does, and they're mean. They don't let any other deer come around. The funniest story was, I was telling y'all we eat a lot of deer. Well, this was 2 years ago. My wife was like, hey, we need more deer meat. And it was the last day of season. Last day. And I go up here to the middle ground blind, and I'm sitting there, and this group of does was coming in every night, about 7 or 8 of them. And I was like, I'm just going to go up there and shoot those. Absolute last evening. I got my GoPro going. I'm in the blind. Well, here come these 4 bucks. And they're little, forking horns, little yearling bucks. And one of them, he's just a mean little deer. And he won't let any other does would never come in. And I'm like, I've got to kill a doe. But they're not coming in with this group of bucks. I physically, on purpose, because my GoPro's going, I wonder how this is going to work out. So I sneak out of my blind. They're not but 25 yards away from me. And I just go running at this group of bucks. Last day, I don't care. And I just want them gone. And no joke, they run off. I go back, get in my blind, less than 2 minutes goes by, and there's the group of does coming in, and I shoot that doe. I got it all on GoPro, and it's just like the funniest thing you've ever seen. I'm like, I was like, I knew they weren't coming in with those bucks.
Yeah.
Being there, because that one, but usually the does would come in and run those younger bucks off, but this one particular buck, he would just, no does would come in when they was around, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna run them off, man. It was really kind of comical. I tell everybody all the time, I was like, man, I could have touched him if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I wasn't even close, man. I mean, yeah, you want to act like, I probably made it 5 feet away from that blind. They were out of the field. I almost had him.
Reminds me of a goose hunt we had a couple years ago. We had a bunch of geese come in, shortchange us, or they shorted us, so they were way out there. We couldn't shoot them.
Yeah.
And they landed. And we were like, who's going to go get these geese up? Because we had geese everywhere, and they were going to land right where these other geese were.
Right.
We weren't going to get anywhere close to killing them. And Taylor's like, fine, I'll do it. Like, we had the Yankees chain.
Right.
He's like, I'm going to get close enough, I'm going to kill one of these geese. Did you end up killing one?
Yeah, it was one of our biggest videos on Instagram for a little bit. Let's put that out
he
there.
gets
the
to
most
the
watched.
Yeah, for a little bit.
He gets to the edge of this blind, and he gets kind of ready to where he can come out at a full sprint.
Yeah.
And like give it his best go. He rolls out there and he kind of slips, and he, boom! I guess you killed one, did you?
Cartwheeled
And
it.
he got close enough to him. I didn't think he's gonna get any. I mean, they were 100 yards out there. He had to close the distance.
Right.
These are big geese too.
Yeah.
Like they were gonna eat pellets.
Yeah.
And he got close enough. He killed one, and it made one of our biggest
That's
videos
awesome.
of him running out there with trying to knock these
And I was in
geese up.
Carhartts. It was so cold that morning. I was in Carhartts.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's
just bundled up.
yeah. We've all.
I'm not built like a sprinter, but I got a mean 10-yard dash.
Yeah, we all. And that's the best part about the outdoors is the stories you remember and the
100%.
things you get to tell people. And it's just like sitting here and talking on a podcast. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where people are probably going to disagree with some of the stuff we say.
Oh, 100%.
It's just you. But like I told you earlier, I was like, man, I agreed and signed up to this deal, so put whatever you want. If I said I'll do a podcast with you. Well, I just opened myself up for criticisms or whatever. And honestly, that's fine. It doesn't bother me because, like I got earlier, I don't know it all, man. Never will claim to know it all.
Yeah.
You know, all I know is, you know, the more time you can spend in the woods and really pay attention to what's going on, the further ahead you'll put yourself next to the guy that's just like randomly gonna, you know, grab his gear and head to the woods willy-nilly and climb up in a tree, you know. And I'm not saying they won't get it done, you know, but I like my odds better, you know. And it's kind of like this deal. I mean, we shoot bows. I mean, I shoot my bow every day, just about. I mean, it may not be much, but you know, with this setup, it's really easy to walk over here and open the door and grab my bow and, you know, shoot 10, 20 arrows. And it's kind of one of those deals I tell people all the time. A couple of years ago, even into last year, for whatever reason, man, I'd always heard about it. It got me. Target panic. And it is the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen in your life, man. I mean, I used to have all the confidence in the world in my bow. I was like, if that animal was within 30 yards and I want to shoot it, it's dead.
Yeah.
And this target panic set in, and luckily it never cost me a deer, because for whatever reason, when it came deer time, I got it together for some reason. But sitting here practicing, it was horrible. Like, I can take you what I call the boneyard out here with all my old targets, and literally the bottom third of them would be blown out, like white hair shooting deer, you know, low. I could not bring my pin to the vitals and let it go. Couldn't hold it there. I couldn't get it there. I mean, my deal, I used to always, the way I shot, I always on deer, I always started low and I'd work my way up the leg, you know, and then come over to the vitals and hold and shoot. For whatever reason, man, I started blaming on my old eyes. I was trying to make every excuse in the world it was, but I was like, man, I was so bad that I would try to force it up, and then it got me punchy, and it just started causing all kind. And I tried to shoot my way out of it. Worst mistake I ever made. I mean, I was like Tourette's, dog cussing myself, you know, out there in the yard shooting this bow. I mean, losing arrows and just missing the target completely at 20 yards. And I kind of, one day I was like, man, this is not how I'm going out. I'm not going out like this. And instead of starting low and coming up, I started high and working my way down. And I forced myself. I saw something, you know, maybe on a podcast, man, I don't even remember, but talking about, because I was Googling it, man, like, and talking to my buddies, like, you don't want to admit to it when you feel like you've got the experience, you've never dealt with it, but I think everyone at some point is either going to or have dealt with target panic when it comes to archery. And one of the guys was telling me, man, you got to draw your bow and not shoot. You got to force yourself to draw your bow, put it on the target, and do not hammer that release. Just do that over and over and over and over and over, then draw it and shoot. That's hard to do. Yeah. That messes with your whole. That goes against everything you ever, like drawing a bow and not shooting it. That goes against everything you ever think of. And man, it took a lot of time and a lot of stubbornness, but I got rid of it, you know, and knock on wood, it stays gone.
I had that happen actually this week. I've been shooting my bow great. I've been telling people how great and confident I was. I go outside, my girlfriend's sitting on the rocker on the front porch watching me, and I am out there, and she's even like, "Are you okay?" And I'm just mad. I can't, you know, like I went from being able to shoot baseball 3 groups at 50 to 60 yards to like I'm almost off the corner on this side, almost hitting the bottom.
Yep. And
I totally switched my shot up. I have all new different different anchoring points. I switched it up.
Yep.
And now this week I'm back to where I need to be.
Yeah.
And I have shot the same way I've always shot for years. And I don't know what happened this year.
It's just it happens. And like I said, everyone's going to, if they haven't, they're going to.
Yeah, you know? I've gone through it twice.
And I've heard that, and I mean, it happened to me at 50.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, and honestly, I think where it came from originally was backing up and shooting long distances. It got me something in there. It got me twisted. Yeah. You know, I don't know what it is or what it was, but yeah, and thankfully it didn't cost me any deer, any misses.
Right.
You know, but I really thought it was gonna. I was like, man, you know, I was almost to the point where I was going to have more confidence in just taking my recurve to the woods,
Yeah.
and I don't shoot a recurve. It's hanging there for looks, man. I mean, it's kind of one of those deals. Yeah, I pick it up, but if I make a good shot, I can't even tell you why.
Yeah.
It's just one of those deals. But yeah, man, it's kind of one of those things that just hunting is. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have hunting.
Yeah,
and I think most guys that hunt and genuinely hunt, they're the same way, man. We're all chasing the same dream,
Yep.
and it's kind of like there's times where I've been against this, or I thought, man, why would you go and do that? And then you have to step back and realize, like, man, you don't know where they're at,
100%.
in their hunting career. You don't know where they're at in their experience. You don't have any idea. Maybe this guy doesn't have time to practice, so maybe his best ethical way is to take this weapon of choice.
100%.
Whatever it is. It's just kind of funny, but I've tried to get a little more relaxed. I still ruffle feathers from time to time, and not on purpose necessarily, but just, sometimes I'm still that guy that speak my mind when you're better off not saying nothing, and I don't know if that'll ever go away, and I hope it really doesn't, honestly, because it's just part of who I am.
Yeah, right.
But there again, if someone was to ever really genuinely come up and want to talk to me about any of this, man, I'm open.
Yeah.
I would tell you the truth, and I'm going to tell you how it is, and I'd even help. I've had several guys over the years, man, I'd like for you to come to my place and have a look at it and tell me what you think. And I've gone, and they're doing everything right. They're doing everything the way I would do it. I was like, man, it's, I really don't know what to tell you here. Everything looks good. All I can say is keep hunting.
Yeah.
Keep hunting. And people get this misconception. It's kind of like, man, they see the pictures. They see the results. They see all these things, but they don't see what I call the behind scenes work.
Right.
They don't see the time you put into it. They don't see how many hours you set in that tree.
Yep.
How many miles you got in the truck driving to and from, and all these different things, and not to mention, but just years and years of knowledge of doing this. Not, it's kind of one of those things. So, man, have I been fortunate enough to take a handful and some good quality? Absolutely, I have. But, man, it's not from a lack of effort.
Right.
And some days are a bust. Some weeks are a bust. But year in and year out, I'm able to get it done at some point. On at least one, what I consider, a mature deer.
Yeah.
A mature buck. But I'll just keep rolling until I can't no more.
Yeah, you talk about that. I shot my biggest deer I've ever shot, 2015, 2016, right? And I put everything down, and I bought a bow. I bought the same Matthews Helium I bought 2013 model. Still have it, still shoot it. I won't trade it in.
Right.
Thought about trading in for a lift, but I can't do it. And it's like, we go over all these topics we just talked about, and one of them was, if you sit in a tree with a bow, you learn the most. If you do this, well, I broke away from the let's hunt rifle, let's hunt muzzleloader. We don't have enough spots for all my family to go hunt, so we're gonna hunt those two, break away. So I broke away, got my own spots. Thankfully, my girlfriend has a great family, and they have family land, so I get to hunt some of that. And then I've gone out and got my own spots.
You better take care of that.
Yeah.
Get that wrapped up, man.
And so I went and got all these other spots, and then I started bow hunting, and I started critiquing myself. I'm really hard on myself on some stuff, right? And the last 2 years, I've went 1, 2, 4, 5, maybe 6. 5 years. The last 5 years, I've harvested a mature deer. Growing up, some years we went 2 or 3 years without me, my dad, brother, or my uncle harvesting. And it's just crazy to think like that's the time you put in, and that's what you're going back to. A lot of these people look at me, and I'm not the best hunter. I'm not good. I just have put in the work and understand the places I hunt, just like you've talked about. That's like Gunner and them. They put in the work, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, he's lucky. He shot this deer." Well, yeah, but I can promise you, if we're not in the field or behind this mic, then something's weird. We have to be at work. You know what I mean? And that's what people, you talk about opening up and people getting mad at, they see this and they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. In this wall, and I'm sorry you guys are watching this and not looking at this. We'll get to that here in a second. But it's like, at 29 years old, I put in a lot of freaking work. And people can't take that in as, oh, that's good for him. They want to be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. You know, and
Well,
it just gets me so worked up. And, you know, doing this podcast, I've seen the comments about people talking about me, and they're like, people would run circles around them. I hope people can.
Right.
But for my success and my happiness, there's nothing else you guys can take from me, because here I am trying to, you know, talk to guys like you, talk to guys, you know, we got testimonial. We're trying to get all these angles of how does this work for you, and that's where we want to be. And it's just funny, the people that get so mad that you can do it, and they want to hate on you for it. And I'm like, why?
Well, there's a saying, you'll never see someone hating on you doing more than you. Never.
100%.
Never, man. Never. I mean, you will never. No one. You will never have someone hating on you doing more than you.
Yep.
That's just in any aspect of life, whether that's professionally, work-wise, any of that stuff. So, it's hard, and we want to puff our chest out, swell up, and be like, "Hey, man, you know,
Yeah.
I bet you wouldn't talk to me like that in person, you know, or whatever." But you just have to brush it off, like, you know what? And man, I've done it. I've made comments on stuff we talked about earlier. Y'all laughed about it, you know, a little bit. Where I'm like, yeah, you know, you probably shouldn't have said it. You probably been better off right there. Is one of them times been better off just to shut up.
Yeah.
You don't really know those guys, and I don't know anybody on. You know, when you start talking about those kinds of things, so you don't really know. What frustrates me in the outdoor industry nowadays is all of this talk about inches and passing deer and why would you shoot that deer. That middle deer right there, that Euro mount, I shot that deer last year, but I shot it here on this 75 acres.
Yeah.
You know, and honest to goodness, I got so many people talking about, well, I thought Booth only killed big deer. Well, you know what? For here, it was above the grade. You know, it wasn't no young baby. It was just, you know, it's a basket rack 8-point, you know, but that particular day on this land, I wanted to shoot that deer, you know, and I wasn't ashamed of it, but I was like, literally, there was people like at the bow shop saying, yeah, man, you're the talk of the day today, you know, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Somebody's like, can't believe Jeff shot that buck. And I'm like, why? You know, I don't understand it, kind of to the point of, man, when I really started getting these deer officially measured, we hit on this a little bit earlier, it opens your eyes to what really bucks score.
Yeah.
You know, and it was eye-opening to me, you know, and it's kind of one of those things. I've got a buddy of mine that does it, and man, I've had him come over, and any good deer I've got, and I'm curious about that I've taped, I've had him tape, and I'll tell you guys right now, I'm never right.
Yeah.
Never. And I'm wrong I'm always wrong on the higher end, you know. I put inches where there weren't inches, you know, and so it's kind of like I say, it's like, God, but I just do that out of my own curiosity. I don't care what that deer scores.
Right.
In the grand realm of things, I don't care what he scores. Now it's just curious.
Yeah.
Like, man, what will that buck score? Because there's probably so many deer in America right now that would blow our minds that have never been anywhere.
Oh yeah, we hear about them.
Yeah,
They've
but
been in
down in
people's
that basement,
basements
you know,
for 20
up in the
years.
attic or something. I mean, it's, you know, it's all for everybody's choice, but that's what frustrates me the most. Is when people buck shame somebody.
Yes.
I guess is what you can call it. You know, I'm like, man, you don't know the story behind their hunt. You don't know if this was the only weekend this guy even had for the whole year to go hunt. You don't know any of the story necessarily. So if it's a legal deer and they shot it and they're happy with it and they put their tag on it, man, you're never going to hear me talk about somebody else's harvest ever.
We've gone
not
back
in a bad way.
Yeah.
We've gone back and forth about, like, we don't understand why people are like that, because we're the hunting community. We're supposed to be
Yeah, man, we're supposed to be together.
We're supposed to fight for topics that you know the hunting community should care about, not fight amongst each other, because there's plenty of people fighting against us on the outside. I promise.
Yep.
And there's always misconceptions and everything, and it's like what we talked about earlier about the expectations. People now, it's like they have these high expectations and they want to like knock people down because they don't hit. Like one guy has this expectations and this guy doesn't meet them, and he wants to. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
Well,
people don't realize how big a 140-inch deer really is.
It's a giant.
It is.
It really is.
People don't realize
a legitimate 140-inch deer is you know, a big specimen.
Yeah.
I don't care, 8 point, 10 point, 12 point, it is a specimen. I mean, I tell people all the time, I try to put it in perspective, like archery wise. Pope and Young, a record book Pope and Young animal is 125 net inches and above.
Yeah.
125 net inches. And I'm telling you, man, 125 net inch deer is a dang good one. You know, period. And some of the shows you see, this is a problem. I mean, it's in everything. You know, I can go out to the lake and catch a 3-pound bass and do my picture just right, and y'all would I tell you it's a 6-pounder, and you'd believe me all day long. Like, man, it's a good one. Or I could take it from a different angle and like, that's a 3-pounder, man. You need to get a scale. You know, you see those comments. Same with deer. I mean, you see it. I mean, we can set behind them as far as we can and put our hand on it, you know, and just make it look a lot bigger than it is.
Yeah.
And we all do it, man. We want our deer to look the best they can when we're taking pictures with them. You know, we're proud of that buck. We're proud of that deer. You know, we want it to get out. We want people to say, man, that's a nice deer. But in saying that, call it what it is. You know, don't exaggerate with your words the size. Exaggerate with your picture, you know, if you want, and make that deer look as good as it can possibly look. It's, you know, it's just one of those things that just be real about it, because especially if we're on podcasts and we're on it, don't discourage a newer hunter from going out and shooting deer.
Yeah.
Don't make them question themselves in the woods like, man, am I going to catch a bunch of crap if I shoot this buck?
Yeah.
Who cares? Shoot it, man. I mean, because we've all, I mean, my career, I told y'all earlier, back in the day, we shot everything. There was no talk of passing up. You know, I mean, it was one of those, I mean, and there was no buck shaming at all. Like, it used to be, man, when the deer got killed, that was big news. You know, everybody was happy. And you might be at a 12-person deer camp back in the day, and if one of you killed one, it was something. And we've really came a long way, and now the deer are better. And man, I mean, technology is really, I think like the cameras, it's opened our eyes to what's really out there. If cameras have done one thing good, they've actually shown people, look what the potential is. You know, deer we've never seen with our eyes, and maybe never see with our eyes, but there he is, and it's on your place, and you got a picture of him. It might be 1 a.m, you know, but he's around somewhere. You know, and I think that has helped our age of our bucks better than anything, is people doing their best to say, you know, I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to shoot that 3.5-year-old buck. Let's see what he'll do at 4. And I can't tell y'all how many I've passed at 3.5 that I never see again in my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And my farms are not big. And people always say, well, I can't pass that deer because he's going to jump the fence and my neighbor's going to shoot him. That may be true, but I can promise you one thing. If you shoot that deer, he is indeed dead.
Yes.
You know, if you pass that deer, he's got a chance.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's a chance he may make it now, and that's just it. I mean, none of my farms are big. I mean, I've always, Jeff, he probably hunts these, you know, he's got these big ranches. You know, even on these non-typicals, man, the high fence game has killed deer hunting. When I have little respect for stuff, and I don't know if this will make the show or not, but when I see, and we all know when we see one, if you're a deer hunter, and it's a high fence buck, when there's no question.
Yeah.
Yep. Nice high fence. Even the tag might be in the ear still. To me, man, it's just killed deer hunting, because like my non-typicals, you know how much, I mean, he paid for those deer. You know, Jeff bought them. You know, he shot that. Those are how many times I got questioned, high fence or free range? I don't even want to answer that question.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, if you're asking me of all people that question, if it's a high fence or not, you don't know me at all. You know, because I mean, I just don't call it hunting. And I need to back up, because there are high fence ranches, South Texas, they're 20,000 acres, 12,000 acres of high fence. I don't consider that the same. When I got a problem with the high fences, literally I've heard the stories and from people that have done it, you're in a pen. It's not just a high fence. You literally, you want that one? Okay. Well, hang on, man. I might have to kick him to get him to stand up. You know, I mean, that's where I got a problem. I mean, some of these other bigger ranches, like South Texas, it's huge. where they're literally, it's acres upon acres, and you're still hunting, hunting just like we hunt. They might have corn on the ground, but it's legal, and it may be high fence, but it's thousands of acres of high fence. So to me, that's where it's different, but it's kind of one of those things where, there again, it's not my dollar. I can't say, well, why did you do that? I can just say, I'd just say I would never do that.
High fence is something I've never been drawn to,
Right.
ever. We had a guy in Alabama. People thought my deer was 3 in Alabama. Whatever. But we pulled a tooth. He was 6.5.
Yeah. And that's even more accurate than the jawbone.
Yeah.
Is actually pulling that tooth and sending it in. And as you evolve as a hunter, you kind of want to know the age, because we're really just guessing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not a biologist. I can't. I'm not a forensic guy. I can't look at that jaw and say, "Yep, man, that's 5." So the jawbone's away too. But I've been told that it's not as accurate.
Right.
It can be accurate, but not as accurate as actually doing the tooth. That's like that buck I shot this year, the 170, 8.5 years old. Blows my mind, man. And he did not go downhill, which is surprising. This is one of the rare cases where I had history with a buck. I've always heard the guys talk. Man, I've been watching this deer and there's been a few deer, more here on this place than any other, but for that farm, probably one of the only ones I've had a history with, for the most part. And I've got pictures of that deer, time stamped. 100% it's him in 2019. And I was after him then. That's how impressive he was. And in my mind, I was like, dude, that's a mature buck. But and now that he's 8.5, he was 4 years old.
Yeah.
He was. Back, we talked about it earlier, but to me, it used to be my age class that I was aiming for was 4.5 and better. 4.5. I don't know. We all get into the half.
Yeah.
But 4 years or better was what I thought. Man, that is even to this day. You shoot a 4-year-old buck or older, you shot a pretty, for the most part, on the other side of the curve of mature.
Right.
Not young, but now my mindset has actually changed, and like we learn, we grow, we change our ways. But to me, I feel like a deer is probably at his ultimate best in that 5 to 6 range.
100%.
But now, after shooting this buck at 8.5, and knowing he's 8.5, and he did not go downhill, maybe he was different. We're all different. There's exceptions, but I think if you let if a deer gets to 5, I think he's as good as he'll ever be.
Yeah.
For the most part, there might be some exceptions, but that 5 and 6 years old, you're going to have a hammer.
Yeah, well, they say this biggest percentage is 4.5 to 5.5, but there's also another chance from 5.5 to 6.5 to jump even more. But it's not as big of a chance, and that's what a lot of people. I like to go after the old deer because they're harder to get, and I like that test. And I've said this before. We can go out and kill 2.5, 3.5 deer any day of the week.
Yeah.
We could do that. I firmly. I can back that up with pictures,
Yeah, I got the footage.
Yeah,
it's
video. Here it is, but it's that buck that wants to walk up 200 yards out and sit there for 10 minutes and stare at everything. That's the one I want, because he's the one that you got to play outsmart, and it's crazy that an 8-year-old creature can be smarter than a 29-year-old human.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what opened my eyes, and it made total sense. We were talking about this, but that story I listened to when the juries were talking, and people can say what they want to about their juries, and they can have but in my mind, them boys know deer.
Yeah.
They eat it, sleep it, breathe it. They've turned it into a highly successful deal. They really, I feel like, man, they know deer.
Yeah.
And they were telling this story about how the hardest buck you'll ever kill is that 5 or 6 year old deer. But they then went on to say, but when that deer reaches 7 and older, they kind of get more comfortable. They let their guards down. They don't range as far. And I was telling you guys about this 170. I didn't put it together until the year before, that the reason I never saw him, I wasn't hunting, because he never came to the farm until December, man. I never had one picture of that buck until December. And when I learned that, I was like, man, this is crazy. But he is not getting here. No wonder, you know,
Yeah.
I'm either tagged out, you know, because I take my rutcation in November, and generally, hopefully, I've got it done. But this year and last year, on purpose, I kept it, you know, I kept the tag for him. And I was telling y'all on him, you know, January the 14th, 2023,
Yeah.
I had him at inside of 20, 25 yards. But it was one of those phenomenal days in the woods where I had 20 deer all over me.
Yeah.
10 of them are giants that I've never witnessed, you know, in all my years. Not that many big ones in one group. And I just didn't get it done. And I had to go all year, you know, of like, man, is he going to go downhill? Because I knew he was getting up in age just from the history I had on pictures. And, you know, then this year, I mean, I got him killed December 15th. But going back to what the juries were talking about on the age class, he showed up in October. Never had I got a picture of that deer in October. Now, he wasn't regular, but he was around.
Yeah.
Then he was around in November. I mean, he was daylighting more. I think I told you guys I was in another stand the weekend before, and it was still gun season. It was that last weekend of gun, you know, what, the first or second weekend of December, when it was, you know, the extended gun season. But I'm in another stand that's, you know, it's 400 yards from where I killed this deer, but I couldn't hunt that stand because of the wind. So I was in this other spot, and if I would have had a rifle, I'd have killed him, you know, that day. It was 10:30 in the morning, and I'm like, I'm fired up. I'm like, man, I've only seen him. That's only the second time I've ever laid eyes on him. You know, everything else was just pictures. And I told myself, I was like, dude, he's going right there. You know, I'm glad I wasn't sitting there and was smart, because he would have gotten my win for sure.
Yeah.
And I know this. And but on the way home, I told myself, I was like, dude, when the wind switches, if I get a westerly, I'm taking off work. I'm doing whatever. I came home and told the wife, I was like, man, I'm going to check the weather. And sure enough, I looked at the weather, and they called for west or southwest wind for like 4 days in a row, which hardly ever happens that time of year. Not for me. And I did. Went to the farm that Friday afternoon and got in the stand and got everything ready. And, man, he showed up. But this time, he showed up by himself.
Yeah.
You know, the year before was with a herd of deer. But this time he was by himself, and it all worked out, you know, and got the job done. And it was a crazy. It's just crazy because I've never had history with a deer that long.
Right.
You know, most of my deer that I've shot, I didn't know nothing about, or, you know, he just showed up this year, you know. But it's just cool, and that's why I love hunting.
Yeah.
There's no answers. I feel like there's definitely no perfect way. There's no necessarily right or wrong way to go hunt. Man, all I can say is go hunt.
Yeah.
You know, hunt it to the best of your abilities, and hunt it as smart as you can. But, you know, in saying that, you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know.
So if you had to say, if we're going to compile everything into 3 things, what would be your 3 things that you watch for hunting that you feel like gets you better odds towards a mature deer?
The biggest thing is wind. You know, for me, is knowing where my setups are and playing the wind. You have to play the wind. I mean, you know, scent control, but man, I don't think there's a product out there in the world. There's a reason they say 99.9% effective.
Yeah. They
got to leave that little dot, because, man, we can't get rid of it all. You know, and I'm not saying I don't try to use scent control, because I do. You know, I'm a firm believer, and, man, I'm not wearing these clothes until I get out of the truck. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I froze my butt off because I'm in my underwear in the back of my truck putting on the clothes I'm hunting in.
Right.
You know, because I won't wear anything in the truck. And so I try to play that too. But I'd say, man, the top thing is hunt your winds right. You know, try to get where you can get to where you're in and out as easily as you can, access wise, where, you know, use things to your favor. Use fence lines. Use weed lines. Use whatever, but try to get in and slip in and out as easy as you can. But wind's number one to me. Probably the next is, what time of year is it? You know, what are the deer doing? And if it's any time of pre-rut, then, man, I want to be around the does. I want to be somewhere where are my does hanging out? Where are they at quite frequently? You know, then I'm going to get in there. And come rut, it's kind of no hold bars, man.
Yep.
I mean, you just get in the woods. I mean, if there's ever a time to take a chance and be risky, is the rut. You know, you can get away with some things. When I say the rut, man, it's going to be that first part of November. I mean, it's all in November, and it can even be the end of October. You could see some heavy rut activity towards the end, and it might genuinely be does coming in because, I mean, deer just like us, they're not all coming in the exact same day.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've seen breeding into January. I mean, I have physically watched it with my eyes. You know, a doe getting bred in January. It's you know, you're like, whoa, you know,
Yeah.
but she either didn't get bred the first time and this is when she finally came back in or whatever. But I would say it's that time of year. Again, there's variances to this thought process of mine, but like I said, if you have a deer on a summer pattern and it stays summer pattern all the way to the opening of deer season, man, you got a good chance of getting that deer killed. You really do. I feel like if you're on a pattern and he's on food and it's a summer pattern, their guard is down. They act differently. But man, what I have learned in my experience, if there's one cold front that hits before deer season starts, just one, and it ain't got to be major. It's just one good cold front right before deer season. It knocks them right out of that. Even if it warms back up, it does something to the deer I hunt. They just change, and all of a sudden they're not on that summer pattern like they were. I'm not saying they won't show up, but they're not as consistent.
Yeah.
You know, something in especially a big mature deer's mind, something with that cold front, I guess, clicks, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, man, my guard's up. You know, because in the summer pattern, I mean, my gosh, we've all seen it.
Yeah.
It's just like they walk right in and go to eating. You know, they don't do that any other time. No. You know, so it's kind of that would be my top three. I think I named three. But and the other thing I would say is put the time in, man.
Yeah.
You know, your anything you can do scouting, be it be cameras, you know, be it be physically with your binos or you know, in the truck or whatever, and glassing some of this other country. You know, my country's pretty tight. So you don't have a lot of distance, but you know, you get in some of these areas in Oklahoma. So what's awesome about Oklahoma is, man, we go to different extremes depending upon what part of the state you're in. But you know, if you can glass deer. You know, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. Just pay attention, you know, and you'll learn year after year, especially if you get the benefit of hunting the same farms, you know, year after year after year. Then you'll learn what the deer really, what they prefer to eat that time of year, where they prefer to hang out, because their living habits change too as the season progresses. I mean, their bedding areas change. You know, at one of my farms, there's a pond right down in the middle of it, in the middle of the woods. It's beautiful, and that's where they like to bed. They're going to bed in the back end of that pond, especially the better bucks. They're going to lay in that mud, basically, you know, the cold grass at the edge of that pond, and that's where they like to bed. I mean, I've learned that because I've walked in there and jumped them out, you know, in the summertime, whether it be going to fish the pond or whatever, and then that's kind of one of those. But after that, they don't bed there no more. Yeah. You know, it's just, there's no foolproof way, but there's definitely things a guy can do to set himself up for success.
And I think another important one that a lot of people leave out is know your equipment and trust your equipment.
Man,
I think that's huge.
Especially in the RC world.
It doesn't have to be the best of the best, but you just got to know it and trust it.
It's kind of, that's why we shoot so much, and me, I've gotten away from it there's been times where I've gotten away where I didn't shoot my bow as much, but in the last, being here where it's so easy too, where you know, I've got an archery range set up right here next to the barn, and I can walk out here, and I've got it set up where there's shade by 6 o'clock in the evening, even in the summer, you know, so you're not just dying out there. It's always somewhat comfortable to shoot. But you're absolutely right. I mean, make it more of, when you're in that situation, that almost the old saying of muscle memory takes over. You know, where your body is fully functioning and it's used to doing these things, and just then you just got to hope you keep it together. You know, because like I told you earlier, my benefit has always been that I don't lose it until that arrow leaves my bow. Some guys don't. They're the opposite, man. They get a deer, and man, they're a wreck as soon as they see it. You know, you can see it, man. I've seen it with my kids, my own daughters. You know, I mean, my youngest daughter shot her first deer. She just turned 11 years old and shot her first deer with a compound bow. at 11.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that the day I live, man, because it was a fork and horn buck. I mean, if you're going to measure this deer, we'll say 10 inches, I mean, I don't even know, but it didn't matter. And dude, when that deer came in and her breathing was different and shaking, her leg couldn't stand still, and she's trying to hold her bow and she doesn't know what to do because I've not done my job as a dad necessarily of like how to, I didn't really, you don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, that soon, but she's got her bow and we're in a ground blind and she's literally holding the whole weight of everything and just shaking, and it's not time to shoot yet. So I'm reaching over and I'm grabbing her bow and I'm setting her cam on her knee, at least where she's not holding all the way. I mean, we're talking 11-year-old girl here, man, and where she's not holding the way of that bow. And I'm just looking at her. I'm like, I'm like, hang on, we got this. You're gonna make this happen. I didn't think it was gonna happen. I'm just trying to convince my daughter at the time, like, you got this, kid, because I could see she was just a wreck. And when she got that bow drawn, and she had been practicing, and man, to be honest with you, we tried the gun thing when she was younger. And it was a good life lesson to my daughter at the time, because you're going to get out of it what you put into it.
Yep.
And when we went with the gun, we didn't practice. She shot it a couple times at best to make sure she could hit, what she was aiming at 50, 60, 70, 100 yards, and that was it. So we go out in the woods and she failed. We missed deer, at 8 and 9. And when she came to me at 10, because all I did was bow hunt, and she said she wanted to take up bow hunt, and I'm like, man, we loaded up and went straight over to the bow shop, and I bought her a bow, and I didn't realize that at that point in time the laws had changed, and a legal draw weight was 30 pounds, for the new compounds, and I'm like, no joke, I'm like, well, put it on 30 and see if she can pull it. She couldn't. She had never drawn a bow, but we got her mid-20s, and then at that point in time, I lived in Collinsville, and we went and got a membership at the Ochaleta Sportsman's Club up there, and they got a 20 target 3D range, and it was like $50 for the year for the archery. Well, I mean, dude, we went 3-4 times a week, and it was good for me because I'd gotten away from 3D shooting as I aged, because it just didn't seem to be a big deal. I just didn't know where to look because it's still just as big. Yeah. But at that point in time, I didn't know. But man, me and her would go, and before I know it, I had her shooting the junior stakes, and all of a sudden, man, she's just doing so good, and we're cranking her bow up, and we're getting it faster, and we're getting the poundage right, and we're getting it all done. And I'm like, man, she'll be able to hunt with this thing this year. And she got to where she's shooting. I made her shoot from where I'm shooting, because she was literally out shooting me from the junior stakes. I'm like, no. I'm like, man, if we're gonna, all right, back it up. And she kept shooting. I mean, by the time she was 13 years old, she had shot 3 deer, a pig, and I believe a bobcat with her bow and arrow. She was a stone cold killer, man. I told her, I was like, yeah, you got that Booth killer blood, because you're killing stuff. But man, she got 14, 15 and that gave it up. Doesn't hunt. I lost her, and I'm like, man, now she's fixing to turn 21, and I keep thinking, man, one of these days, and my other daughter, she turns 15. That's her little bow over there, and she'll go. She's notorious. Early season, she'll hunt or hunt. Yeah. But it lasts a week or two, and then she's done. And I don't force it on them. I'm not like, oh, you're going to the woods. I've never done that with my girls, because I had girls, and I'm like, I'm not gonna, anytime we ever went fishing or anytime we ever went hunting, when they said they were ready to go or done, we went. I was never that dad that was like, oh no, we're staying. So, but it's kind of one of those things. And I was telling you earlier, my stepdaughter, she's getting married next week, and so my son-in-law to be, he's gotten into it, so it's kind of relit. I told you guys, man, I've been a loner hunter, almost a good part of my adult life, because that's just how I did it, man. I mean, I could hunt by myself, and I had one buddy that would hunt with me, some, but I mean, most of my hunting was solo. And with Chasen coming along, and he's ready, so hopefully my goal this year is I really want to see him get just a decent buck. It doesn't have to be a giant monster or none of these things, but I want him to put be able to put his hands on a nice antlered deer, you know, where he's going to be excited, you know, and I mean, if he listens to this podcast, he might get mad, but he missed a couple last year, you know, and yeah, and that's why I told him, I was like, dude, that ain't going to be the last time. I mean, if you're a bow hunter, you're going to miss, you know, if you're a bow hunter, things are going to go wrong, you know, you're going to hit a deer bad, and he's done all these things already, but he did shoot, he did take 2 does, you know, with his bow last year, so, and I think he's more comfortable with the bow because of how much of shooting we've done, and he's shooting with another buddy of ours, Garrett, and these guys, you know, I call them the youngins, and they can go chase this stuff, you know, and go get it, fellas. But they're this year, that's our goal. I mean, he's drawn out for an elk tag, and I think he's going to Wyoming 1st of September.
That's awesome.
So I'm like, man, I hope he goes and has a good trip. You know, I mean, it's still, man, it's a hard hunt. This ain't a guide deal, man. I mean, he drew in, but it's still, but he's going with Garrett, and Garrett's got a lot of experience. I mean, Garrett's a dude that gets it done quite frequently, and on the average, he's killing nice animals. And he's got the experience out west, so you know, chasing will be hopefully there, but hopefully he gets that done, and then he's a Kansas resident, so he gets to hunt Kansas. They open September 15th.
Wow.
So he'll be hunting and hopefully have some under his belt before our season opens, and then me and him can get busy. You know, busy here. But we've got strict orders from the women that we need to kill more deer. You know, I was telling you guys, I processed 7 deer last year, and we've been out since May. That's how much deer meat we eat. We love it. You know, when we figured out the benefits of the protein and how much of it we can eat, because my wife and I, we're both into working out. I mean, we get up every morning and we go to the gym, and she's done 2 competitions, and I jumped in 1 last November. Probably never do it again. I mean, it's just too much. I'll have to admit, it's a lot, you know, and it's a whole nother world. And I'm glad I did it once, and I can say, you know, at 51 years old, I went and competed in a contest like that. But that can be her dream, you know. But when you start really getting into your food, I mean, the amount of deer meat that we can eat versus beef or chicken even or pork, and get the more protein and the less fat, it's crazy, man. So yeah, we eat it, and like I said, we've been out. So October 1, I've got strict rules. No, man, you're
gonna feel aggressive.
Something is getting shot. You know, you need to kill a deer October 1st. You know, so I'll go here, or I'll go to Fort Gibson. That's the killing zones where you can go down there and there's deer everywhere. You know, it's kind of one of those things like, yeah, I can probably get one killed, you know, the first day.
It's creeping up on us, I can tell you that.
I'm ready, man. I mean, I'm so excited, just like I am every year. Nothing has changed. I look forward to it. I'm ready for fall. I got a few bass tournaments to get out of the way still yet, but I think I've got a couple championships in September, and I've got a couple in October, and the October one's hurt, man. You're like, dang, dude, because it never fails. It'd be okay if it was like great weather. And I'm not worried, but it never fails, man. If I've got a championship on that weekend and it's 2 days, the weather's going to be like conducive for wanting to be in a tree, you know. So, but I it's just 2 weekends in October, and hopefully it doesn't interfere too much. But no, man, I'm ready. I'm excited, and man, if it goes well, maybe you guys are coming back and we're doing another podcast. We're showing off a couple deer, you know. Who knows?
Go well.
Yeah, who knows?
So let's kind of switch this up, and since we've been torturing everyone, let's kind of flip the camera around, and you go through and kind of tell us a couple of your favorite deer, and you know, some stories about them, and we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I mean, I can do that. We can start with this one. This is what got it all started on my farm, of what really the potential is of this place and what could actually happen. This was eye-opening. I mean, I've taken some nice bucks off this farm, but this deer was just, I mean, he's just a freak, just a big non-typical. The way the whole hunt went down, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, but it was, you know, November 6, 2016, and, you know, it's one of those hunts you won't ever forget, but he was just tending a doe and came in, and everything happened fast. It was haywire, you know. I mean, I had a little window to even shoot through. Was fortunate enough to make the shot at 30 yards, and basically it was a double lung shot. I didn't know that at the time because I lost my arrow when it went through the hole I was shooting through. But he probably didn't go 70, 80 yards was piled up. So it's kind of cool. But he nets right at 200. The gross is a lot lower, but the gross was right at 200. The net was, I want to say 180, right in the 180s. But man, it's kind of like I've always told people, nets are for fishing. I go off the gross. So it was just a cool deer. Big bodied, big neck. I mean, he's just, you can kind of, it's crazy. You can tell that a lot of the deer on my wall were all these bigger neck deer and the bigger body deer came from basically the same farm. And it's Lincoln County, so it's central Oklahoma. But what's crazy is, man, everybody's always like, well, you must have some big ag or something around it. No, there's not. There's really nothing to speak of. I mean, the Deep Fork River's not too far. I think a lot of these deer maybe come up that river, come out of the bottoms, but it's basically just oaks, man. I mean, I don't even know, honestly, within square miles of any kind of ag food that's planted that I know of. Occasionally you'll get a winter wheat field, but I don't think that's doing it. This was the 2016, and like I said, November 6th. That was what got it all started, and I really thought this was going to be this was it, man. I told myself, well, there's your lifetime deer. You'll have a hard time out doing that. And then fast forward to 2019, and I end up harvesting this deer. And this was, you can tell by his coat. He's a real thin coat, but he's a big deer. But that's a summertime hair, man. I mean, he was summertime patterned. Had pictures of him on a camera that we accidentally left up, and he just it just all worked out crazily. And I got him shot the first set. I didn't hunt opening day, but it was October 2nd, and it was, man, I'll never forget driving up to the farm. My truck was reading 95 degrees outside, and I'm like, what are you doing, man? I mean, what are you going to go set, and how's this going to work out? But I'd heard that if you had a deer in summertime patterns, those deer are sometimes the most killable deer you can have if they stay on that pattern. And that's what this deer was on. He was on a summertime pattern. It never cooled down. And I mean, he walked in without a care in the world and gave me the first shot was at probably 25 yards or less. And man, it was a bad deal. And I tell on myself all the time, because I want to be honest about it, but I gut shoot this deer with the first shot. I don't know if I punched my trigger or whatever I did, but I hit this deer way back in the guts, and he ran off, stopped at 50 yards, and stood there for 10 minutes, man, forever. And the exit wound was so big on that side that when he ran and jumped, there was, a volleyball size of intestines sticking out of him. And I'm just up in the tree, man, mad, and I'm like, man, lay down right there. I will sleep in this tree, and man, if you lay there and just expire, I won't make a move. And I had two other bucks on me at the same time I shot him, and none of these deer knew what happened. They were literally like, what happened? What's going on? Well, the two other bucks, they started feeding again, and that made me knock another arrow, thinking maybe this guy would turn around, not knowing what's just happened or what's going on, and give me another shot. Well, after 10 minutes or so standing there facing away from me, he turned broadside, and I just like, man, he's 50 yards. What do you got to lose? Try to shoot this deer. Put another arrow in this deer. And I set my pin. I was shooting a single pin at the time, and I rolled her to 50, put it on him, and just got my motions together and everything. And that shot at 50, I couldn't have stabbed him any better. I knew when that arrow hit this deer that he would. It was a fatal shot. I heard him run off and crash, and man, it was all over from there. It was crazy, man. It was just a beautiful deer. He's got it all. He's got all the extras. He's wide. He's got mass. They both in their own ways are so unique to me and exciting. And this deer grossed a little over 210, and his net is right at 190. He lost quite a bit in deductions on the net, but I call him a 200 incher because he grows 200, so that's the way I see it. Of course it's not hard to say these are probably my two favorite, but there's other deer on this wall that, man, through my career have been crazy. But it's kind of like this buck up here on the far left. He comes from the same farm, and He's just a big old heavy, he's mainframe 9, got a kicker that you can't see sticking back there. It's a measurable point off his brow tine on this left side. But he's just a big brute of a deer. He was a fighter. It kind of made me a little upset. My taxidermist at the time, both his ears were ripped, completely, and he fixed them. And I was like, man, why, no, I wish you'd have left them split. But he had both ears split, and underneath this left eye, there was actually a fragment of the end of a tine under his eye in the bone. It's just crazy how tough these deer are. But that was I can't remember the exact year on that, but I want to say it was probably 2012, I think, somewhere in there is when I ran an arrow through that deer. And the rest, they're all special, but the one that I can think of, just to kind of, y'all can see them all, I don't want to take the time to talk about them all, but if you go down here to the far end, this buck right here, and I don't know if you can see it as good, but I'm watching this side of him when I shoot this deer, and he's 20 yards away, but I see this side, and this G2 measures 17 inches on this. If you can bring it over, I mean, it's just something that you really want to look at, but that is what I'm looking at when I shoot this buck. I mean, it's the craziest, it's 17-inch G2. Now, this deer runs off, I watch him pile up, I'm like freaking just pumped of what I just shot. I mean, he just looks like an absolute monster. And when you get over here and I pick him up, this side is forked. That's it. I mean, it's a forked horn on this side. And I was really, at first, I was almost a little disappointed in a way, but to this day, this is one of my favorite deer. I mean, the mass that this deer carries and the tine length, even on that forked side, we can talk inches, but this buck, I've got a buddy that's an official scorer, Boone Crockett, but he came over and he scored a lot of these deer, and they're 100% official, but I take this deer in the 150s. Well, I take him wrong. That's not what he is. When my buddy came over, but when you really think about it, this deer grosses a 135 and some change as a 7-point. I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, to get to that many inches on a 7-point buck, in my mind. But to this day, that's like one, minus the 2 non-typicals, this is one of the very, very cool deer that it's just uniqueness. There's others. This buck here, he's all crazy over here. You can see on this farm in particular, the non-typical genes, it's there. I mean, we got typical rack bucks. Let's see here. I got a deadhead over here. Let me grab real quick. This buck was on the table, and this is a deadhead that we found and out in the hayfield one year, and it's an 8-point deer, but I've got his official score. It's right there, 150 and an 8 gross as an 8-point. Now, I don't know about too many people, but that is a giant 8. I mean, he's got it all. This is a deer I would love to have been able to say that I harvested, but I found him dead. But he came off that farm, and so we've got, not only on this particular farm do we have the non-typical genes, but we've got some big typicals as well. It's just a unique place. It's not a numbers place. That's where the other farms come and play. I've got other farms that have more deer, but where these non-typicals come from, there's just not a lot of deer on these farms. But man, I love hunting there, because you just don't know at any given time what's going to come across and what could come out in front of you and what's going to open up. So it's kind of one of those things. It's just really cool, and I love sharing the stories. I mean, I've been fortunate enough where a few people have come out and wanted to see these deer and talk about them and stuff, and we have, and it's a lot of fun, and I don't mind at all, man. I mean, it's always cool to share your stories with people, and then what advice you can give, whether you're right, wrong, or indifferent, you can say what you want to try to help people to get out in the woods and harvest an animal. I mean, it's just what it is.
Well, Jeff, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely,
today.
man. It's good to meet you guys.
Like I said, I've kind of followed you forever on Facebook, and I've heard all your stories.
Yeah.
And it's been great to kind of put a face to it.
Yeah, man.
To meet you.
Yeah, it's meeting new people, and like you said, Facebook, you get these friends because we're in the outdoors, and you'll see, occasionally you get to see people out, and you're like, hey, man, we know each other on Facebook. It's always, to me, even better to shake a hand and put a face to a name and all this other stuff where you really see where guys are coming from. Because, man, most of us in the outdoors, we're all trying to do the same thing.
Yep.
If you're truly an outdoorsman, you respect the game, the thrill of the hunt, and it's kind of one of those things where we should just do that with all our fellow hunters, especially the guys that are doing it right or trying to do it right.
Absolutely.
Everybody we should be trying to pull together.
Yep.
And we're not always going to be on the same page.
Yep.
Because we're just that's humans, man. But
100%.
if we're all doing the same things and striving for the same goals, man, there should be, that's why some of these conventions that are starting to happen will be kind of cool to go to. I've never been to one, but like you see this, some of these groups that are getting together and having these wildlife conventions, it'd be kind of cool to go and sit and talk, because, man, I learn something new every day.
Yep.
I learn something from every person I've ever come in contact with the hunting, with the fishing, and all those things. And that's kind of, man, it's just what I want to do. And like I said, man, I'm not slowing down.